Hi everyone,
Ember Reviews,
Tano here, the internet's busiest
anime nerd,
and it's time for a
seasonal Blitzkrieg.
Alright, you know the drill. Bunch of new shows airing right now, and I watched the first episode of each until they suck. More details in the description. And now that we've rushed through that, we can talk about other things that rush through their introductions, like the first show premiering this season, To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts. At first it starts off like a fairly promising military drama, but once it hits the 10-minute mark, this show just blazes through so many different themes and concepts it'll make your head spin. I am not exaggerating when I say that this reminded me of the last episode of Charlotte. This whole first episode could have been decompressed into at least half a season, but by the end it's pretty clear there was a set plot structure in mind that needed to be reached quickly, so they crammed a ton of backstory into a single episode and reduced what could have been complex and intriguing characters into one-note plot devices. Visually, Mappa does a pretty serviceable job, and there aren't any moments that falter to a noticeable degree. It's also just plain cool to see a bunch of soldiers transform into monsters and tear shit up. However, I'm also feeling a distinct lack of ambition in how each frame is put together, like they just copy-pasted panels from the manga and called it a day. There's no oomph to any of the shots, so when the pacing kicked into overdrive and sped past all the cool ideas, everything sort of faded away into my subconscious. It sucks that an idea with such potential wasn't given enough weight to develop properly, but that's just how it goes sometimes. I gotta say, there's been a lot of pretty decent TV shorts lately, and Magical Senpai is definitely one of them so far. Character designs are pretty solid, but the comedy is where it shines, with a strong sense of setup and payoff, and a tendency to be fairly unexpected and kinda cruel. Big Titty Magician Girl kinda speaks for itself in terms of this show's appeal, but it's nice that there's some good comedy to actually bring that premise to life.
Papa.
And the good TV shorts just keep on coming with Are You Lost? This one's got more of a serious comedy bend than Magical Senpai, but is arguably just as funny. The calmness with which the main girl goes about typical survival strategies contrasted with how gross they are makes for some pretty decent shock humor. And the survival info dumps are surprisingly interesting. It's definitely not a great show to look at, but the use of intense lighting to fit the setting drowns out a lot of animation faults, so this one's going on the watch list for now. I'd like to say this was a letdown, but that would require me to have expectations in the first place. I'll admit the opening scene definitely grabbed my attention, with its sound design amping up the tension and anxiety, but the flashback immediately following it is just kinda mediocre. Really awful comedy and bland characters without any nuance to them were bad enough, but it's also pretty ugly as well. Bad compositing, weak character designs, and iffy shot composition resulting from this stupid letterboxing that makes the frame feel too cramped and narrow are hard to stomach. I know the manga's been getting pushed really hard by Viz's marketing staff, so I was hoping the anime would at least be watchable, but I guess not. On the plus side, the Dumbbells anime is pretty good. It's been a few seasons since Doga Kobo made a series with some strong writing to supplement their ever-strong animation. To be honest, I was sold as soon as this cut happened because it showed a willingness to think outside the box with storyboarding, and the comedy just kept getting better as the episode progressed. The characters are striking a great balance between exaggerated traits to create comedy and realistic ones to get us invested. Plus, this absolute Chad of a human being is just the best. And of course the animation is top-notch in practically all areas, especially the character designs. I'm not sure why, but between this, Fire Force, and the new Sword and Shield trailer, this seems to be the summer of fit girls, and I am totally on board for that. In any case, I'm really digging this one so far, and I'm ready for more. which is definitely not something I can say about Demon Lord Retry. Isekai stripped down to its basic components with nothing at all being added to liven up the formula, egregiously horrible animation, and just a clusterfuck of ideas with no direction had me gaping in awe at how bad it was. When even the voice acting and opening animation are terrible, you know you found a special kind of bad that makes you think old man Miyazaki might have been onto something. Next. Wow, this might be the blandest looking anime I've seen all year. Not in terms of premise, mind you, though I'd be hard pressed to say it's a super engaging story. I mean how it actually looks. It's like whoever put this series together only knows how to do two things with the frame. Close-up panning shot, medium still shot. Close-up panning shot, medium still shot. Close-up panning shot, medium still shot. It's mind-numbing how dull this show looks, and anything about the story that's even remotely positive gets drowned out by how blandly it's presented. Next. So this one started off kinda promising with how the joke in the opening scene plays out, but it very quickly devolves into, look at this trope that exists. Isn't it funny that this trope is a thing? Like, you have a character who kinda looks like a Yankee girl, but you made her a Chunibyo instead, and the only joke you could come up with was Chunibyos are weird? Weak sauce, my friend. I think I'll search for my laughs elsewhere. Alright, time for the first big title of the season, Dr. Stone. It's weird to be doing a seasonal video and talk about a show that I just did a video on 2 weeks ago, but it looks like my predictions were mostly spot on. Except the part where I pronounced the character's name wrong for the entire video. Yuzuhira, 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 Yuzuhira. But no one seemed to notice, so close enough. The first episode adapted the first 2 chapters of the manga, so it'll probably take 5 episodes total to finish the first arc and get into the really great stuff. And it also looks like they're putting slightly more focus on Senku in this part than the manga did, which will definitely help keep the story from getting dull. Animation-wise, I was kinda hoping for a bit more, but when manga art is this detailed, there's only so much you can expect from an anime adaptation. There was some pretty decent shot composition, and they did allow the most important emotional beats enough time to breathe, but the contrast in style between character art and background art can get a bit too extreme sometimes. Overall, a fairly okay adaptation so far, and I'm ready for... Wait a minute. Where's the Donald Trump cameo? Nope, changed my mind, worst adaptation ever, 0 out of 10, next! Okay, wait a minute. You're telling me one of my favorite anime writers is working on a show adapting her own manga with a director who's made a bunch of stuff I really like, and it's about a bunch of girls trying to not be horny all the time? How do I get more of this all the time forever? So yeah, this is Mari Okada's new sex dramedy thing, and it is very Mari Okada, which I am more than okay with. There's also a not-so-subtle theme about the perils of sex talk and how it can grow to encompass everything about a young person's life, and I can't think of anyone better to explore this than Okada. What surprised me most though is how visually strong it is. Again, it's from a director I know is really good, but just the overall design sense is so engrossing with its soft and muted color palette and faintly outlined character designs, giving a weakness to them that accentuates the drama they're about to go through. I should definitely warn you that Okada's writing is not for everyone. She has a tendency to go harder on drama than Oedipus did on his own mom, and that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. But if awkward sex jokes and drama are your thing, then dive right in and try not to pop your cherry on the way down. After that, we get another instance of stuff from creators I like that will probably be good, with Fire Force, the new series from Soul Eater author Atsushi Okubo. The overall narrative is fairly strong, though some of the scene rearrangements don't work quite as well as they did in the manga, and it managed to pull off a strong emotional turn at the end. From an animation perspective, this is a very high quality production. Lots of strong action cuts and brilliant displays of color and effects work, and the character designs feel super polished polished yet still retain their distinctly Okubo style. However, my big issue with this first episode is the editing. The opening scene has a bunch of cuts that are either too long or too short, which really throws off the pacing. And while it does get better as the episode moves along, it never completely goes away. If I were a betting man, I'd say this has to do with director Yuki Yase being one of Akiyuki Shinbo's many proteges, having worked on a ton of anime by Studio Shaft. Shaft anime tend to be very extreme and meticulous when it comes to editing, which is probably why the parts in Fire Force where the editing is pushed to the forefront look really good, but the scenes that just need to be shot normally feel out of step. Fortunately, the sound work is also incredibly strong and often makes up for the lapses in editing. Hopefully this gets better as production moves along so the full power of an Okubo action manga can burn as brightly as possible. Moving on from there, we have... Okay, I'm not really sure what I was expecting from this one other than this studio made Comic Girls, so I could at least give it a try, but honestly it's just kinda bad. Weak character and mech designs, tons of overacting, and a general unpleasantness sour whatever might have been good about this one. Original anime productions that don't get a lot of hype before they air tend to be extremely generic and mostly banking on whatever market they intend to cater to, and this one seems to be following that trend, so I gotta let it go. You know, I was pretty skeptical of this one because I thought the TV special from a few months back was very meh, but I enjoyed this first episode quite a lot. The aftermath of Fate Zero is weighing very heavily on Waver, and seeing where he'll go from here after the lessons imparted to him by Iskander should be pretty entertaining. To be honest, the magic itself was always my least favorite part of Fate because a lot of the time it just didn't make a whole lot of sense.
NANI?!
I mean, Fate's magic system is a bit too complex for my liking, but it's handled pretty well here. Animation-wise, I'm kinda stunned at how well they managed to replicate Ufotable's Fate style despite none of the animation staff having ever worked on a Fate series before. The character acting is expressive and fluid, action scenes are super hype, and there's some really great camera work and framing to keep my eyes interested. There are a few nitpicks to be made here and there, but this project has a strong core that will hopefully blossom into something worthy of being a sequel to Fate Zero. God, I wish that were me. I'ma be honest, this one doesn't really have anything to it at all, and it's clearly meant for a really young demographic, so I just gotta leave it alone. Guys, I think Shin Onuma is starting to lose his fucking mind. Everything he's made since Watamote has been getting progressively worse and less stylistically engaging, either because it's totally hollow and pointless, bizarrely unhinged, or just straight up fetish pandering. Naka no Hito Genome is by far his most disjointed production yet. His style is definitely there, but it's severely diluted and buried under a mountain of narrative gibberish. The past 4 years have been like watching his career die in real time, and I don't like that feeling. Baka and Test is still one of my favorites, and his style was a huge part of that show. I really hope this guy comes out with something good soon because, holy shit, this was just bizarre. Let's move on. Oh boy. Another cheaply made idol series with a sluggishly slow start and subpar character designs. Just what I wanted. Like, it's not even hilariously bad like that mermaid one, it's just bland and boring. To be fair, my first idol show was Zombieland Saga, so my bar for an engaging opening sequence is set pretty high, but that's how I am with pretty much every show, so... next. Aw yeah, baby, Takagi-san Season 2, who's ready for some fucking cuteness? Oh, fuck. Officer, I swear, I didn't do anything, I was just... Wait, what are you doing? What's going on? Oh, you have gotta be fucking kidding me! Why do this now? Well, the one good thing to come out of this is this absolute legend of a torrent file. Why yes, I would like to watch Mr. Takagi, who is a teasing master. Yes, that is the show that I am having the interest in. Thank you much. Next! And finally, the promised day has come. The anime adaptation of Vinland Saga is upon us. Carried out by Wit Studio no less, and so far it is definitely worth the hype. I was afraid I was going to be constantly making comparisons to the manga and throwing out nitpicks everywhere, but it mostly captures the spirit of the original so far. Atmospheric, heartfelt, and brutal all in the span of one episode. I was a bit concerned that they decided to jump straight into Thorfinn's backstory instead of starting with chapter 1, but this could be good for new fans unfamiliar with the source material, seeing how Thorfinn eventually becomes his present-day self in real time. Visually, I'd say Wit mostly pulled it off. The extensive use of high-octane camera work that this studio is known for is here in full force and perfect for the action segments, though I do hope the CG is kept to a minimum. Character designs are strong and retain as much detail as they possibly can without getting in the way of the animation. The setting is beautifully executed, the colors are on point, and somehow they managed to make this scene even more brutal than it was in the manga. I should probably watch the other 2 episodes just so I don't make the same mistake as I did with Boogie Pop last season, but so far Vinland Saga has had a much stronger start than Boogie Pop and is definitely one to watch out for. Well, I knew it could only go downhill after Vinland Saga, but this was much less like walking down a hill and more like getting shoved off a fucking cliff. While I appreciate the ambition in regards to cinematography and certain animation cuts, these are some of the ugliest character designs I've seen this year, and not a single thought seems to have been given to compositing or creating a cohesive environment to move around in. Coupled with some terribly boring writing, this one is a hard drop. Every time I see another Nobunaga anime, I get really excited and think maybe this one will actually be good, and I'll finally get a decent historical drama about one of the most important figures in Japanese history. And every time I end up severely disappointed. There's nothing outright bad with this one, but it's still unbelievably boring and doesn't give any weight to anything that's happening. It just feels like I'm watching a bunch of pictures move in a sequence, and you're gonna have to think of something a bit more engaging than 1870s Edward Muybridge works if you want me to stick around. Okay, new rule. If a new isekai comes out that's either totally generic or, in this case, completely broken, you're just gonna hear this sound. Because I'm already on page 6 and there's still half a dozen shows left to cover. I'm not dismissing them just because they're isekai, this is just gonna be my shorthand for telling you what I think of them and an indicator that these specific shows simply aren't even worth paying any mind to. Next. Well, this one was much more interesting than I was expecting, but it still has a ton of problems. Lots of ambition when it comes to shot composition and animation, and for the most part it's executed solidly, though there are some areas where they obviously cut corners. What derails it for me is the characters, in that they feel stiff as a board and don't seem to exhibit any genuine emotion. I mean, this guy's partner of 4 years just died in the field, and he doesn't show any kind of emotional pain at all, just mild irritation that his boss isn't letting him get revenge. It's a nice looking show, but filled to the brim with narrative backwash, so I'll pass. Get good, scrub! Man, I just can't get into these slow start, super ponderous Noitamina anime. I know it picks up once the actual music starts, but I can already feel myself falling asleep because everything else is so meh, and I don't want to just be waiting around for the math rock to happen. I do want to note that the opening background music was pretty solid, but as soon as it transitioned to the most generic track in the world, it was like a switch flipped in my head and I immediately stopped caring. Yes, these kinds of things matter to me. Next. Okay, so this one is legitimately kinda interesting and has a great sense of humor. It's kinda like an inverted magical girl series where the demon is the main character, but it's also viewed through a slice-of-life comedy lens. The personalities of the 2 leads are solid and lay a strong groundwork for the comedy, the sound effects are surprisingly punchy, and the character designs are super cute, but also flexible enough for the comedy they execute. It's not an incredibly gorgeous show overall, and this hair gradient thing really really bothers me, but it's been a while since I've seen a show with this aesthetic that I liked this much, so I'll give it a go and see where it takes me. Actually, no, we need to stop for a sec. I knew this one was gonna be kinda fetishy, but I wasn't expecting one of the first shots of the mom to be her titties bouncing back and forth. Like, you remember that Oedipus joke I wrote earlier? I didn't know this show was coming out when I wrote that. It was purely coincidence. We are hitting fetish levels that shouldn't even be possible. Please make it stop. Next. I'm actually super conflicted about this one. It's got a ton of style, the cinematography is on point, it might have some of the best action scenes from anything this season, and it seems to have a clear intent with what it's trying to do. Unfortunately, the narrative is pretty sloppy, and most of the human characters are either totally unmemorable or fall just shy of being interesting. Tone might be a bit of an issue as well, with the main villain for this episode being so over the top that it became kind of abrasive. Sadly, I'm not confident enough that it'll get better, so I'm dropping it for now, but I would at least recommend trying it out if you think you can stomach the bad stuff more than I can. And that's about it for this season. There's one more show that premieres at the end of the month, but considering it's about rugby and the PV has 0 action shots in it, my hopes are not high. Here's a list of all the shows I can initially recommend in order from best to worst. Let me know what you think and what shows you're excited to watch in the comments below. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourke Tinjoin, Christine Seibert, Call Me Catlord, Ember's fave roommate, Eugenio Mendoza, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.